welcome back to April's Cozy Corner. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your favorite blanket, and let's get cozy. Today, we're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Most people have heard of trauma. Most people understand pain. Most people know what it feels like to go through something that changes them forever. But fewer people talk about what can happen afterward. Not the suffering, not the survival, what comes after the survival. Today, we're talking about post-traumatic growth. The process of becoming stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and more connected to yourself because of what you've been through. This is not about pretending trauma is a gift. This is not about saying everything happens for a reason. This is not about minimizing pain. Trauma hurts, loss hurts, abandonment hurts, and betrayal hurts. But sometimes after the storm passes, we discover parts of ourselves we never would have known existed. Let's talk about that journey. When something painful happens, our first goal is survival. We wake up, we make it through the day, we breathe, we keep moving. Sometimes survival looks heroic. Sometimes survival looks like simply getting out of bed. The world often celebrates recovery as if it's a straight line, as if one day you're hurt and the next day you're healed. Real life doesn't work that way. Healing is messy, growth is messy, recovery is messy. Post-traumatic growth begins when survival is no longer your only focus. It begins when you start asking different questions, not why did this happen to me, but who am I becoming because of this? There is a difference. One question looks backward, the other begins to look forward. And while we can never change what happened, we can influence who we become next. Many people discover that trauma rearranges their values. Things that once seemed important suddenly lose their grip. The opinions of strangers matters less. Status matters less. Trying to impress everyone becomes exhausting. When you face deep pain, you often begin craving something more meaningful. Peace, authenticity, connection, rest, and purpose. You start realizing that life is fragile, and because life is fragile, your time becomes precious. A difficult season can become the thing that teaches you not to waste your life trying to be someone else's version of success. Before hardship, most people don't know how strong they are. Strength isn't something you discover on easy days. It's revealed on difficult ones. You discover it when your heart is broken and you keep going. You discover it when anxiety tells you to quit and you continue anyway. You discover it when grief visits your life and somehow you find the courage to keep loving. There is a version of you that existed before the trauma. There is another version that existed afterward. Neither version is better. Neither version is worse. They are simply different, and often the version that emerges afterwards understands resilience in a way they never could before. One of the deepest wounds trauma creates is self-doubt. You stop trusting your judgment. You question your instincts. You wonder if you'll ever feel safe again. Healing often involves rebuilding the relationship with yourself. Keeping promises to yourself, listening to your body, respecting your boundaries, honoring your emotions. Trust is not built overnight. It is built through small acts repeated consistently. One day you realize something remarkable. You stop looking outside yourself for every answer. You begin trusting your own voice again. Pain can make people harder. Pain can also make people softer. Many people who experience post-traumatic growth develop deeper empathy, not because suffering is beautiful, but because suffering teaches us understanding. When you've sat in darkness, you become more aware of the darkness others carry. You become less interested in judging, more interested in understanding, more patient, more compassionate, more willing to sit beside someone else's pain without trying to fix it immediately. There is something sacred about rebuilding, not because destruction is good, but because rebuilding requires courage. It requires hope. It requires faith. Every time you choose to start over, you're making a powerful statement. You're saying, my story is not finished yet. You're saying, I still believe something beautiful can exist beyond this chapter. And that belief matters because hope is often the first brick used to rebuild a life. Many people secretly want to return to who they were before the trauma. Sometimes that isn't possible. Sometimes healing isn't about returning, it's about becoming. The strongest trees are not the ones untouched by storms. The strongest trees are the ones that learn how to bend without breaking. Growth doesn't erase the past. Growth integrates the past. You carry your experiences with you, but they no longer carry you. The wound may become part of your story. It simply stops being the entire story. One day, you may notice things that once seemed ordinary. Morning sunlight, a cup of coffee, a good conversation, a peaceful afternoon, a child laughing, or a quiet walk. The people who have endured deep struggles often develop a greater appreciation for simple moments. Life becomes less about perfection and more about presence. Less about achievement and more about meaning. Less about proving and more about living. And perhaps that is one of the greatest gifts growth can offer. Not a perfect life, but a deeper one. If you're still healing from something painful, I want you to remember this. You do not have to rush recovery. You don't have to force yourself to be positive. You don't have to pretend you're okay when you're not. Give yourself permission to heal at your own pace. The strongest transformations often happen quietly, like roots growing beneath the surface, invisible at first until one day everyone can see the tree. And maybe that's where you are right now, growing beneath the surface, becoming stronger than you realize, becoming wiser than you know, becoming someone who survived and someone who grew. Thank you for spending this time with me here today at April's Cozy Corner. I'll see you in the next one.